The story began in the medieval era. The inhabitants gathered in front of the king's mansion and praised the saint. Saint Dorothy addressed the residents. She wished happiness, love, and peace to everyone who had gathered today. Dorothy is the saint of the Manpillan Empire. Everyone in this empire loves and deeply respects the girl. But even the beloved Dorothy has exceptions. The emperor of the Manpillan Empire, Theodore Eliot. People know this man as an infinitely kind and wise ruler, and Dorothy came to him. He didn't think the title of saint was appropriate for the girl. Theodore is the only one who feels great hatred towards the saint. Theodore called Dorothy a fraud. In this religious empire, she must defeat a man who doesn't believe in God, but rather despises him. In her past life, Dorothy was named Park Seoni. As the daughter of a shaman, she was born with divine energy, and her mother constantly told her to embrace the gods. If a girl knew the words of the gods and went against them, a curse would be placed on her. But Dorothy hated the life of a shaman. As soon as someone found out her name from her past life, she was mocked because of her shaman parents. Park Sunyo was tired of surrounding herself with gods and spirits. The girl was going to live a normal life like everyone else. She believed that by throwing away her name, Dorothy could avoid such a fate. But an accident occurred as she was heading to the office to change her name. As the girl was crossing the road, a car was driving straight at her at high speed, and a collision was inevitable. Living out her final moments, Park Seon-yo couldn't believe that this was her death. She had believed that dying prematurely was better than being a shaman. But now, as a girl on death's doorstep, it was more terrifying than she had imagined. Before she died, Park Sun-yo wondered if things would be different if she believed in gods. The next moment, she opened her eyes and heard someone calling her name, Dorothy. The girl came to her senses. She was sitting by a tree and trying to figure out if she was really alive. She remembered being in an accident, but now she was fine. Dorothy didn't feel any pain. Looking around, the girl was surrounded by a completely different environment from what she remembers from her past life. No matter how much she thought about it, everything seemed too strange. The reflection was different, and Dorothy was in a new place. Dorothy wanted to approach the respectable-looking man to find out more about this strangeness, but there was a line of people in front of him. She didn't know why there was a line of people there, but Dorothy decided to follow them to get at least some information. Standing in line, Dorothy tried to figure out what part of the world she might be in, but nothing indicated that this was some kind of movie set. The kingdom was not like Korea. The inhabitants did not look like Korean inhabitants at all, but for some reason, Dorothy understood their language. When it was Dorothy's turn, she said she was lost, but the man was only interested in her name. When the men said her name was Park Seon-yo, they laughed because they thought the girl was calling herself a saint. The man had heard various crazy names, such as tramp and its variations, but saint was the name that appeared in myths. When the laughter ended, the man gave Dorothy some papers, saying his shift was over, so he would take her to a temporary shelter. He considered Dorothy lucky because temporary shelters had recently been appointed by order of the emperor. Suddenly, the girl heard Dorothy's name again, but she continued to follow the man, who praised the emperor for caring even for the homeless. Dorothy thought she had heard strange things because she had only just woken up. After showing the girl to the room, they handed her the keys and a blanket. But Dorothy insisted that she just wanted to know where she was. But they didn't listen to her. The man asked Dorothy to make sure that she returns the key and the blanket when she leaves, and she also needed to make a certificate with the identification. The girl wondered how she could explain anything if she was so openly ignored. But suddenly, she heard Dorothy's name again. Dorothy lost her temper, turned around and screamed, asking who was constantly repeating Dorothy. The boys got scared and asked the girl why she suddenly started screaming and asked her to calm down. The main character asked the men to listen if they heard a certain voice repeating a name. They thought Dorothy was delirious, saying that the girl was in critical condition and that perhaps a psychiatrist should be brought in. But they decided to get away from trouble. Dorothy remained in the room, and even more questions appeared in her head. The voice addressed her again. Such a strange tendency caused excitement and shook in the girl's hands, because apparently she was the only one who could hear this voice. A light appeared right in front of Dorothy, who understood that she was surprised by her sudden appearance in this world, but a voice asked the girl to calm down and listen carefully to her. Dorothy wanted to know who it was. The next moment, the goddess appeared before the girl. The beautiful goddess was called Agatha, She was the being who protected this empire. Dorothy thought she had simply woken up in another world, but she found herself in the very place she had tried to avoid at all costs. Agatha was quite pleased when she realized that Dorothy could actually see her, causing the girl to become frightened. The goddess said that a mysterious man suddenly appeared in this world, and she was not only able to communicate with the goddess, but also to see her. Dorothy was confused. She didn't know what to do. This was her first time when a deity appeared before her. Agatha turned into a smaller version of herself. She asked the girl to listen to her. The goddess apologized for having shrunk. Agatha admitted that her divine power had diminished, and she was having difficulty maintaining her physical form. The girl decided to introduce herself fully. She is the one who protects the Manpulin Empire, the goddess Agatha. Dorothy recognized the name of the goddess and the kingdom. She had once read about them in a romantic novel. It was a love story about a country girl and a viscount, but he never opened his heart to anyone. But Dorothy had one reason why she enjoyed reading this ordinary story. Because the Emperor, Theodore Eliot, was a good friend of the Count. Dorothy didn't particularly like the Emperor, but rather the things that interested her. For example, when Theodore led a scientific revolution to modernize an empire that had been buried by religious faith. Therefore, the novel was full of a sense of life, unusual for an era based on new culture and technology. The story felt like its energy was being transferred to the reader. When Park Seon-rai grew tired of shamans and religion, she supported the emperor's reforms. Agatha reassured the girl, telling her to be calm because nothing dangerous would happen right away. Dorothy was not very optimistic because she was already being pestered by a god who did not inspire confidence. Besides everything, the emperor in that novel hated Meltu, the national religion of the empire. Because of the plague that swept through the kingdom, Theodore lost his entire family. Dorothy thought that if the emperor found out about her contact with the goddess, he might execute her. The girl only escaped death. She didn't want to risk dying again because of God. Having decided for herself, Dorothy was not going to do anything related to the gods in order to survive. The girl went to the cafeteria. She couldn't even swallow her food. Too much had happened in one day. The little goddess continued to follow Dorothy, asking the girl why she pretended not to hear the goddess. Suddenly, 3 men with strange grins appeared in front of Dorothy. The main one asked why such a beautiful girl was alone. The main character ignored the men, but he continued asking questions, wondering if she had a boyfriend. Agatha tried to scare off the bullies, but no one heard her. Dorothy couldn't understand why God was so useless. The man said that if Dorothy felt lonely, she could always turn to him. Alexander? Agatha told Jane to think about his words and repent for his too sharp tongue. Agatha also revealed to Dorothy that the man's real name was Jane. She suggested that Jane was afraid of his name because it sounded more feminine. Dorothy still didn't trust the goddess, but she had no other choice. She addressed the man by his real name. The guy next to him was confused. He assumed Dorothy's name was Jane, so he said that the name suited her. The real Jane was even more confused. Only his grandmother knew his real name. Alexander turned to his friends and started pushing them, saying that now would be a good time to go and eat. Dorothy finally realized that the goddess really did have powers, but Agatha was glad that they left without any problems. Surprisingly, Agatha was a very kind god, because all the previous ones that Dorothy knew were never so friendly. They tormented her all her life because the girl refused to be possessed. After which her mother became a shaman. Mother climbed the mountain every day at God's command. She damaged her knees from running every day. Dorothy wondered why Agatha was worried about her, so she decided to ask her directly. Dorothy asked fearfully if the goddess had come to haunt and mock her. Agatha was horrified by this question. She nervously asked why she should make fun of her. The goddess and the girl talked a lot, and this eased her fear. Agatha had no reason to mock her and take her body. Dorothy didn't understand why Agatha had come to her at all, so she wanted to clarify the request the goddess was asking. Agatha decided to get down to business and reveal the truth. The goddess wanted Dorothy to convey the divine voice to the emperor. Dorothy was horrified by this task because it would be very difficult to make the emperor believe in God because he hates everything connected with them. Now the emperor has a false understanding of the spirits. In addition to all this, they have lost their power due to the fact that the sanctuary has been corrupted. Agatha continued, wanting Dorothy to help the emperor understand everything and convert the empire to the faith. The girl tried to digest what she'd heard and, overcome with nerves, began eating rapidly. Dorothy pretended not to hear the goddess's words. She wasn't going to suffer because of the gods, who, even in this world, didn't give her peace. Dorothy didn't yet know how to live in this world, so she couldn't help anyone, except how a person who is treated like a homeless person should meet the emperor. Dorothy decided to sleep at least now to distract herself from endless thoughts, but suddenly her bed broke. Agatha appeared before her and apologized, saying that apparently the night captain was having another hysterical fit. There were a total of 8 protective spirits in this empire, and just like Agatha, their divine power had weakened. But thanks to Dorothy, their strength remained, albeit at a weak level. In the middle of everything, the night captain, who thought that Dorothy would not help, became furious. Agatha revealed that the captain had not actually meant to break the bed, and she apologized for his actions. Their true forms are in the higher world, but they all gathered together in front of Dorothy. If one of them broke the girl's bed, she feared what might happen if the 8 spirits became angry with her. Realizing that Dorothy's life was in danger one way or another, she decided to side with the spirits. Agatha thanked the girl. If their powers continued to fester, they could disappear completely. In her head, Dorothy didn't want any problems and hoped they would go away. Somehow, Agatha knew what the girl was thinking and said that if they disappeared, the world would descend into chaos. If the spirits and gods disappear, the nature spirits will disappear too. And if they disappear too, the world will begin to fall apart. And then people will slowly begin to disappear after the divine beings. The main character understood that this was worse than the spirits' attacks on people. Come to think of it, after the ending, the novella barely explained anything. If this is true, the world really did stop believing in divine power after the emperor's reforms, and a great catastrophe resulted. Dorothy decided to help, but the chances that she would die while serving the spirits are unknown, and if the world comes to an end, the chances are 100%. Agatha liked this enthusiasm. If Dorothy helps her convince the emperor, the goddess will also help bring her dreams into reality. Agatha wanted to know what Dorothy wanted. The girl looked down and wondered what she needed. Dorothy wanted one thing: to no longer see things that others couldn't see. To become ordinary, like the people she saw every day. But if Dorothy says this, she will be denying the protective spirits themselves, so it is better to reveal her dream when everything is over. Dorothy had other concerns now. There was just one big problem. How could she meet the emperor if she was just a homeless girl? Agatha said the best way would be to go to the sanctuary and appoint herself a saint. But Dorothy did not want to get involved with those the emperor hated. If the emperor just walked around it, it would be lucky, but considering what he did in the novel, the man is ready to destroy the shrine. Dorothy decided to become famous by spreading her words so widely that even children on the streets would know that a saint had appeared in the world. If she became popular, even the emperor would be unable to ignore her. Agatha noted that this was a good idea, but now it was necessary to reconsider the methods to get to this. Dorothy had an idea. The girl headed towards the clearing of the homeless shelter. Going to the nearest people, she revealed her name, saying that she had not been here for a long time, asking if she could join them. The middle-aged couple were glad of Dorothy's company, so they welcomed her warmly. Dorothy asked the goddess if there were any people there who looked too uncomfortable or worried. There was one girl. The goddess noticed that there was bad energy circling around her leg. Thanks to Agatha's ability, the main character was also able to see it. Her skin is rotting. The problem was with the things that this woman had. One of her items was cursed. Dorothy decided to use this information to get a first impression by asking Mrs. Lynette if her leg was okay. The woman was surprised. She never gave her name. And for some reason, Dorothy could tell that her leg hurt just by looking at it. Dorothy assumed the doctors didn't know the cause of the pain. Her skin was turning dark and rotting, making it difficult for her to sleep properly. The man didn't know about it, and Lynette was becoming more and more surprised because Dorothy was telling the truth. Dorothy walked closer to Mrs. Lynette and told her to throw away the fake ruby she had picked up in the tavern. After which, Dorothy just smiled and asked to tell others about her abilities. A few days later, friends noticed Lynette and saw that the woman looked much better, even though she said that doctors were useless. Soon another man came to Dorothy. She knew that his arm hurt, and it turned out to be true. The girl said it was all because of the ancestors' malice. The boy secretly tried to sell the family familiar, for which he paid. After this, The guy's condition became much better, and he told his friends about the amazing abilities of St. Dorothy. Even Norman, who had suffered so much, said he felt better after meeting the saint. They all wanted to visit Dorothy. Agatha called Dorothy amazing. She solved people's problems with such ease. The priests of the sanctuary did not have such abilities, but Dorothy would not have coped without the skills of the goddess. However, simply becoming famous at the homeless shelter wasn't enough. Dorothy wanted to find another way to increase her popularity. Suddenly, 3 men entered Dorothy's room. One of them wanted to know if Dorothy was the saint. The man looked rich. Agatha immediately realized that he was a nobleman, which is what Dorothy wanted. He had a request for Dorothy that he wanted to entrust to the saint. This was the perfect opportunity to get out of the homeless shelter. If Dorothy takes full advantage of this opportunity, she will be able to build a reputation for herself. The main character asked the man to sit down and reveal what was bothering him. He said his wife was being too overbearing. The man wished that Saint Dorothy could bring out his wife's bad temper. He asked if it was possible for his wife to stop talking altogether. It would be even better if she became quiet and obedient. Dorothy was silent, and the man asked her to speak faster, asking if she intended to stay in such a place forever. The main character asked the man to leave. Although this was her only chance to get close to the nobility, she didn't want to become popular with such requests. The rich man got angry and ordered one of his subjects to take Dorothy by the hand. The girl got scared. The man asked why she looked down on her, just because she made a saint of herself while she was homeless. Didn't give Dorothy the opportunity to talk to him like that. Agatha knew that the man became a viscount only because of his wife's family, and to this day, he repays her debt by cheating behind her back. Agatha told Dorothy that the viscount had only come there because he'd been caught cheating on her and wanted to hide it from his wife's father. With this information, Dorothy turned to the man and revealed the truth. The girl asked if he really thought that everything would change if he shut his wife's mouth. The viscount was angry. Dorothy was still being held and was about to be hit, and she told the man to try to close her mouth. Dorothy ordered her subjects to let her go, and suddenly the 2 men were thrown back by a mysterious force. Turning back, Dorothy noticed that it was Agatha's doing. As it turned out, she could not just talk to her. The viscount's hands were bound by a magical force, and he was surprised and asked if this was Dorothy's doing. First of all, it was necessary to find out where the viscount found out about the girl, so Dorothy asked if he wanted a broken arm. The man fell to the ground in fear and asked who Dorothy was. The girl said he already knew the answer, but she had one more question. The man soon revealed that there was an illegal casino den in the city, and anyone could get in there regardless of their status. He heard they were looking for someone good at the casino, because even the homeless could get in, and that's where he heard about St. Dorothy. Dorothy wanted to know if any nobles went there. The man revealed that the casino had another separate room for them. This made Dorothy smirk. If the nobility were going there, then this was a great chance. Agatha considered these people rotten. Running a casino that lived off honest people was terrible. Dorothy wanted to go to this lair. She didn't want to gamble, but it would be nice to meet the nobility. The man didn't understand anything. Right in front of them, Dorothy was talking to herself, but they couldn't tell her anything. The main character asked Agatha to think about it. This was the best place for rumors to start spreading about Dorothy. Nevertheless, the goddess decided to agree, and the girl turned to the viscount, asking him to show where this lair was located. Soon they found themselves in this illegal place where many people of different statuses gathered. The casino didn't inspire much confidence, but the place turned out to be bigger than Dorothy imagined. Agatha called this place chaotic. Various emotions were intertwined here. Even without the help of the goddess, it could be seen. The viscount asked the saint if the spirits would be angry with him, since he had done everything they asked of him. Dorothy ordered him to kneel and beg his wife's forgiveness. This casino had very tight security, and the smell of perfume was everywhere in the casino. Dorothy walked inside. The masked men didn't understand who she was, assuming that she was today's opponent. The viscount brought this girl, even though it was against the rules. No one cares as long as she amuses them. The boys wanted to know if Dorothy could handle the cards at all. The girl understood that if she didn't participate and just stood there like a homeless saint, she would be laughed at. Dorothy told the goddess that she would have to play, even though Agatha didn't approve of it. But that was the only way to attract attention. Dorothy asked if the spirits knew how to play these games, for the girl had never played in a casino before. Agatha smiled wryly, declaring that they knew. The spirits would show her their skills in games. Over time, many people lost to Dorothy's lucky hand. People saw such a pro for the first time. They wanted to play with Dorothy again, but they had already lost more than 3 times in a row. Thanks to Agatha, she won without stopping. Now all attention is focused on her. Dorothy asked if they were tired of losing over and over again. The girl suggested something more interesting. The main character asked if they would like to play a more interesting game with a chance of 1 in a million, which she called the Holy Game. The rules are simple, as the name says. The saint will guess the opponent's true feelings. As expected, the nobility was already addicted to gambling. They joined the Holy Game and lost. The game did not end as mere entertainment, because even those who tried to insist that the saint was lying, her answers were too accurate. Eventually, rumors began to circulate about Dorothy, just as she had expected. People actually began to believe she was a saint. The rumors were so strong that they spread from the small town and went to the regions. A couple of days later, Dorothy was choosing a place to live and settled on a very large house. Dorothy, not on purpose, but because of the Holy Game, she got a lot of money and bought a house thanks to it. To the seller's surprise, the main character handed him a bag of money, which was filled with gold coins. The reason Dorothy left the homeless shelter to make the building a sanctuary. It's good that more people are coming because of the rumors, but the room in the shelter couldn't withstand such an onslaught. Dorothy can continue to attract customers to the casino, but it's better if she gets customers as a saint. Just think, this girl tried so hard not to become a shaman, and now she's creating her own sanctuary. This was her first time working as a shaman, but thanks to her past life with her mother, who was a shaman, she knows what she needs to do. Agatha didn't know the meaning of the shrine, so Dorothy said she would show her everything. But first, they had to go to the store. A short time later, Dorothy purchased many decorations for the sanctuary, such as statues and fittings. Agatha still didn't see the point in them. The main character convinced her that to make people believe you, you need a certain level of performance. If you create a dramatic atmosphere in front of people, they will naturally focus and will be easy to make believe. Agatha wanted to know if the food on the table was part of the performance. Dorothy revealed that it was in honor of the spirits and gods. The goddess never received gifts, only when there was something important or a desire. Agatha thanked Dorothy. The food she presented was very tasty, and the goddess had not felt like she had eaten decent food for a long time. Dorothy was glad that the goddess was happy. Next time she would do something else. Suddenly, another small entity appeared in front of the main character. He also wanted to eat. Many entities appeared. Another spirit asked the young one to show some etiquette. Dorothy was shocked. They appeared because of her influence, for she is the only one who can save the gods. Goddess Agatha revealed that the beings behind her are spiritual protectors who had previously been hiding. The first 2 guardians were named Horte and Vesta. They were spirits of children and hearts, and were very happy to meet Dorothy. The third spirit turned out to be the spirit of war, the knight captain, Marcus. He apologized for not being able to control his power and destroying her bed. As it turns out, from this moment on, the 3 spirits and the goddess will be right in front of Dorothy. The main character didn't expect this. Agatha alone was stunning, but these spirits were too much for her. The goddess realized this and decided to intervene. Agatha said that there was no need to just appear before Dorothy, because the girl couldn't handle such a sudden change of events. Dorothy decided to think about it in a different way. She has 8 spirits to protect her, so she should not be afraid of the Emperor. So Dorothy's sanctuary is officially open. At this time, the Emperor had already received information that the saint had appeared in the casino and created the saint's game. The article about Dorothy was right in Theodore's hands. The saint began to amaze everyone in the kingdom. Theodore was surprised that he, as emperor, had not known until then that a saint had appeared. He called his informants more useless than newspaper reporters. The emperor thought that in order to take the title of oracle, which appeared in the legends of ancient times, the sanctuary must be very confident. Theodore wanted to know what the high priest was doing with it, but he didn't know anything about it yet. Clutching the newspaper in his hands, Theodore said that if they were doing this their way, there was only one option left. Theodore ordered informants to discreetly and quickly find out what connections this girl who calls herself a saint has with the sanctuary and bring her to Theodore. Dorothy's shrine became a very popular place, and many people from different parts of the city came there. The man was kneeling in front of the saint. The situation was terrifying, and he asked if the saint saw anything. Dorothy asked James on behalf of his grandmother if his poor leg had stopped hurting. The saint continued to relay the grandmother's words. She insisted that the woman James would marry was a very bad person. Thanks to Agatha's power, she can not only learn information about people, but also see the spirits attached to her clients. The girl who came to the saint said that someone had come to the sanctuary from the imperial city. People from the imperial city came to accompany the saint. Her popularity had reached such a level that even the emperor, in search of the saint, Dorothy told the man that the reading was over for the day and that he should listen to his grandmother's words. The girl added that 3 guards arrived who were going to take her to the emperor. Dorothy went to the back exit, which seemed strange to the girl, since they were waiting for her at the front entrance. The main character asked me to do her a favor. 10 minutes after she leaves, the girl must pass on a message to security. They waited outside because they did not want to interrupt the saint's reading, but when they doubted and went inside, she left. A little while before this, Agatha revealed that she could not read the emperor's mind. As it turned out, Theodore had a blessing that had been passed down from the first emperor. The hopes and prayers of his ancestors for their children gathered into a blessing that became a power that even the sacred spirits could not touch. Dorothy said that didn't make sense. He was already dangerous enough, and her powers weren't working on him now. As Dorothy had planned, the rumors spread throughout the country, so there was no way the emperor would not notice it. Dorothy told the goddess that she wasn't sure if she could help her now if the emperor realized she was a fraud. Agatha said that wasn't true. Dorothy had a cleverness and a spark that they didn't have. Dorothy understood that one mistake, and she could be executed for disrespecting the emperor. Suddenly, an idea occurred to her. If she could find a way to compromise between the spirits and the emperor, they might survive. So Dorothy decided to bypass the emperor and his guards and head to another place. Dorothy came to the city sanctuary because it is the only group in this world that can keep the emperor in check. The Manpelin Empire is a sacred nation, and the sanctuary once held great prestige. But for a long time now, it has been a den of corruption that exploits people's hope and faith. Now, Dorothy wanted to find a group that she needed to discern was in the best place to protect her. When her plan to use her powers on the emperor fell apart, Dorothy was left with only one option: to find protection. Dorothy came inside and said she wanted to see the priest. Her name was Saint Dorothy. The guy apologized and said actors weren't allowed to see the priest. Dorothy knew they'd heard rumors about her, but none of the priests had approached her because a so-called saint born in a casino was a horrific sight. In that case, Dorothy needed to show her abilities. She turned to the guy and said that Arthur behaved inappropriately. The main character said that he was the one lying because he recently lost money in a dispute and lied to his wife. This money was a bonus, and it would be terrible if his wife found out, so Arthur had to agree to her demand. Turning to the second guy, named Anton, Dorothy said that Emily, the girl he was talking to, was not in love with him, and he should apologize for laughing at her freckles 2 years ago. Next in line was Thomas. The saint said that no one cares about his birthmark, which he pokes with a pen. After a little while, Dorothy agreed to be taken to the priest. The girl wanted to go straight away, but she had to reveal all the secrets of the saints. Soon, Dorothy found herself in front of the bishop. He said that he was busy and Dorothy should have turned around at the exit, admitting that she was an actress, and not go that far. The bishop decided to get straight to the point and admit that they had no need for swindlers in the sanctuary. Dorothy said that he was reassigned to this city 20 years ago, and he regretted leaving the capital. She added that if the bishop wanted to return to the capital, he should listen to her carefully. People from the imperial palace came to Dorothy, but she chose to trust the sanctuary. If the priests from the main sanctuary find out about this, they will be very interested. A few days later, the emperor learned that the saint had fled to the sanctuary. Besides this, the cart with Bishop Dumont and the saint headed straight to the capital. They tried to catch up with them, but they were faster. The emperor asked Isaac if it was common knowledge that he did not have the strength to go against the sanctuary. Isaac replied that only the highest nobility and the sanctuary knew this. If word had spread, everyone would have spoken, but no one did. The emperor said that since the sanctuary treated the saint as a fraud, They had not come to her for the last 2 months, and the saint had also not done anything towards the sanctuary. But for some reason, Dorothy was the one who knew about it. If she wanted to rely on the sanctuary first, it would have made sense to go there much earlier. Dorothy remained quiet for 2 months, then burst into the sanctuary just as the emperor was making his move. It seemed he knew about the war between the sanctuary and the crown. Suddenly, a knight burst into the emperor's office and said that they had urgent news from the main sanctuary. They decided to officially return the saints. The emperor smiled. They were going to do everything publicly, and they also wanted to make a ceremony to present the saint to the people. Such wondrous events made the emperor think that someone could understand how this world works and was carrying out a well-designed plan. While in an expensive carriage and traveling through the city, Dorothy was delighted by this view and said that this could be called the events of the novel. Bishop Dumont had high hopes that Dorothy would help him return to his post in the capital. Once there, the sight of the sanctuary stunned the girl. The place looked more like a palace. Everything inside was shrouded in gold, and Dorothy was overcome with dazzle every time she looked at the sanctuary. In the past, even if it was small, it was holy, the purest place of faith and hope. The spirits attempted to send a revelation to stop the sanctuary's corruption, but faith had already faded so much that the spirits lacked the strength to do so. So all the spirits could do was simply observe. Agatha was really glad they had Dorothy because now they have hope for stability. At first, Dorothy wondered why the goddess had asked her, someone who wasn't even a saint, for help. Bishop Dumont entered the high priest's office, apologizing for his abrupt arrival. He said that they had important business. The high priest told the bishop to never show his face in that sanctuary again. The bishop only wanted to reveal information about the saint's return. The woman was not happy with this news. When she finally realized who it was, she smirked and said that it was the one who was on the front pages of the newspapers, the very same scammer. Dorothy greeted the high priest. The woman said that an ordinary girl who didn't know proper etiquette was walking around the city with the title of saint. The spirits must have been delighted. The main character expected such a reaction, so she came to prove that she really was a saint, but on the condition that they join her. Even without Agatha's help, Dorothy already knew how greedy this priest was. The woman noticed the saint's impudence and asked how she would convince her. Dorothy approached the high priest and asked if her real goal was to keep the emperor in check. The woman told the bishop to leave the room and not let anyone else in, and to make sure that no one could hear this conversation. Now the high priest said they could continue their dialogue in peace. Dorothy said it was the first time she wanted to talk about her ability. She could find anything she put her mind to. For example, the location of the secret safe that the priest valued so much. The woman called her imagination good. People in her positions are surrounded by stories like these all the time. Dorothy interrupted the priest, saying that she had prepared a separate building in the city of Miguel. It looked like a small tavern, but inside there was a huge safe under the building. Dorothy didn't understand what the priest was going to do with it, and the nickname she came up with for the safe was called Judy. The main character noted that it was a good name. She could hear the voices of the 8 protective spirits, but not only hear and speak with them. The priest said that it was impossible. Even the priests who had received blessings could not do this. Dorothy added to the priest that she had already shown what she was capable of, so she asked for help. Before she came to the sanctuary, the emperor sent people to recruit her. Then the spirits told her that the emperor should not catch her, so she ran to the shrine. Dorothy wanted to use her abilities to help the sanctuary, so they would recruit her first. The high priestess said that the emperor was not the kind of person who would ever believe in saints, but he was looking for her. In any case, the high priestess believed that, in addition to the benefits, she could become another lever of pressure on the emperor, so she agreed to accept it. Dorothy had nowhere to stay, so the high priest suggested staying in the sanctuary. As long as Dorothy was in the sanctuary, the high priest believed she would bring wonderful benefits. Agatha noticed that the high priest didn't yet fully believe in Dorothy as a saint, and she was also afraid that information might leak. The priest decided it would be more useful to keep Dorothy close by to observe her. The high priest told Dorothy to go and rest, and she would assign her an assistant so that Dorothy could turn to him if she needed anything. The main character wanted to know when she would report the saint's return. The priest said it was too early for her to be involved in the sanctuary's affairs, but she planned to reveal the truth during her free week. Dorothy said the woman needed to reveal her appearance tomorrow, so it would be in tomorrow's newspaper. The formal ceremony could wait. Theodore's subjects have already come to capture her. She could be dead within a week. The woman said that if she turned out to be a fraud, the sanctuary would be destroyed. Dorothy asked to take too great a risk. Suddenly, the high priestess's behavior changed. Now she was angry and arrogant again. Agatha used her divine powers and lifted the enraged priestess into the air. The goddess could not believe that the high priestess herself had no faith and was full of greed. The woman couldn't understand what had just happened. She couldn't believe that these were real abilities of spirits. Once outside the high priestess's office, Dorothy exhaled. She had achieved results. The girl told the goddess that her abilities were very good. Agatha barely managed to do it, but everything was crowned with success. She is still one of the divine beings, but her power is too weak, so she regretted that she could not help Dorothy. Thanks to Dorothy, Agatha and the other spirits' powers were gradually returning. If the other spirits regain their powers like Agatha, they will soon be able to use their unique abilities. The goddess said that from the moment they met, everything felt like it was getting better. Suddenly, Agatha began to worry. Her connection with Dorothy slowly began to break down. The loss of communication occurred because a man was heading towards them whom the goddess could not read. A sanctuary worker burst into Dorothy's presence and declared that His Majesty the Emperor had arrived, and the high priestess had ordered the saint to be hidden immediately. Dorothy didn't expect such a quick reaction from the Emperor, but his intelligence is better than she expected. It would be best to hide with a lot of people. Dorothy wanted to get to the nearest chapel. If she hid alone in a quiet place, she would stand out. The girl asked Agatha to inform her if Theodore appeared in the chapel, for if she couldn't read him, she had the opportunity to see him. But the connection with Agatha disappeared completely, which meant the girl would have to leave Theodore herself. Theodore's instincts were at their peak. He predicted that the girl would be there, so he immediately came to the chapel. The main character decided to pretend that she was talking to other believers, so that maybe the attention wouldn't be on her. Dorothy continued to talk when suddenly Theodore appeared right behind her and slowed his pace. The girl hoped that the Emperor passed through her, but he stopped and addressed Dorothy directly. Dorothy raised her head at the Emperor's command. He asked the girl to reveal her name. The girl thought for a while and said that her name was Maria. Her long look at the Emperor was very suspicious. The Emperor ordered the girl to take off her hood, but the girl said that she was in the middle of spiritual practice. Theodore allowed her to be hooded if her practice was more important than her life. Dorothy shouldn't have thought about it in this situation, but Theodore was incredibly handsome. Theodore asked if Mary was the Saint of Demont, the holy actress who took over the entire casino. The main character tried to look bad and said that she didn't understand what was going on. The Emperor smiled and asked again if the girl was a saint. Dorothy was confused. Without Agatha, things were much more difficult. Until now, the girl had been able to confidently bluff because the spirits had been helping her. Now she had no way to force him to help. Dorothy was not yet a useful card for the Emperor. She was just a thorn in his side that needed to be removed. The girl pretended that she took the words about the saint as a compliment from the Emperor. Theodore was surprised. He didn't expect to hear such nonsense, so he directly asked the girl if she was okay. In the original novel, even after Theodore became Emperor, he never found an empress. He was surrounded by too many girls aiming for social advancement, and he found it too difficult to find a woman. Dorothy continued to play the role of a certain Mary, praising the Emperor and his beauty. The man behind Theodore turned to Maria and asked who had sent her, the Viscount or the Baron. Maria said she knew nothing about it, and she was just in the middle of her practice. The Emperor leaned over and asked Dorothy what trick she was trying to play on him. Theodore interrupted the girl and revealed that she had just been playing an acting role and that it was all a lie. Dorothy knew she shouldn't have treated the Emperor so easily. If she continued like this, she might die. The girl fell to her knees and apologized. She said she was just an ordinary person. She was greedy. And in return, she received the Emperor's attention. Even if Theodore hated the sanctuary and the saint, for the people, he is still a loyal Emperor. If Dorothy appears to him as an ordinary citizen full of hope, he can change his mind. Theodore couldn't listen to Dorothy's pathetic speeches. He told her to stop and offered his hand to help the girl stand up. Without any murderous intent, Theodore seemed like a completely different person. He told Isaac it was time to go, admitting that the fake saint had irritated him. Dorothy is out of trouble now, but it's only a matter of time before he returns. The only way to protect herself is to become even more popular. Agatha appeared before Dorothy, asking if she was okay, but because of the Emperor's gift, her voice could not reach the girl. As it turned out, the spirits saw this performance. She wondered how Dorothy became so resourceful. The other divine spirits were also shocked. Dorothy was beautiful, and her reflexes overcame her thinking. In moments like these, you forget about pride and focus on survival. Dorothy was surprised. The spirits had mocked her before, as well as the shaman's daughter's prejudice. An uncontrollable smile appeared on the main character's face. The warmth and comfort from the creatures she tried so hard to avoid felt so calming. The high priestess told Theodore that he had threatened the people in the chapel, and the emperor replied that he had simply greeted them. Theodore thought that the high priestess understood his plans much better than anyone thanks to the holy spirits. The priestess replied that the spirits had given noble guidance, but they weren't interested in small details. Theodore found it strange. The saint who had appeared recently, according to rumors, she revealed people's secrets thanks to the ability of spirits. He didn't say that a saint was better than a high priestess, but for a priestess to not hear spirits at all suggested that the spirits weren't interested in her. Before leaving, Theodore asked the priestess to think about who would take her place, since she was already of age. The high priestess slammed the table furiously. The emperor's arrogant behavior was driving her crazy. 16 years ago, his parents bowed before her and begged for mercy, but the child they raised dares to act so proudly. The priestess asked the priest to organize an event after they announced that the saint had returned. Since the emperor personally came in search of her, as the saint said, it is profitable to use her. This is an opportunity from the spirits themselves. It is practically their blessing for the priestess to use this opportunity and rise to the very top. Dorothy will be the perfect tool for this. The day after Theodore appeared in the sanctuary and caused such a commotion, the information spread throughout the kingdom. News of the saint's return spread throughout the nation. The sanctuary completed certification of the saint's return. Dorothy felt strange. She couldn't believe that she had finally become a saint throughout the empire. The high priestess said that the townspeople were overjoyed at the return of the saint. Dorothy should be happy. Although Dorothy was happy, there were a lot of words in the newspapers about the high priestess. The woman tried to take some of the glory for herself. The only reason why the status of a saint spread so quickly throughout the kingdom was because the spirits helped with the blue lights. The blue lights are proof of the revelation. They all lit up in the imperial sanctuary at the same moment. It all happened thanks to the power of Agatha. Dorothy said that when she begged the spirits to help her, they agreed immediately. Agatha told the girl that the high priestess wondered why the spirits were interested in such a useless girl. Dorothy asked the goddess to repeat the high priestess's thoughts word by word, so that she would understand them completely. The priestess said that Dorothy's followers are already praising her name, some even bringing her gifts. It looked as if they were ready to move on to the ceremony. The priestess invited Dorothy to meet her followers. Now Dorothy had to follow the priestess's instructions, but Agatha said that the priestess was only thinking about her own benefit. As soon as the saint came out onto the balcony, there were many citizens below who were shouting with happiness. Dorothy had expected such attention, but it overwhelmed her. From now on, the girl would have to be in such places often. A woman from the crowd cried out and asked the saint for help. Her child was sick, and she had collected the last of her money to make an offering to the saint. It's gotten to the point where the sanctuary won't do anything without money. The sanctuary takes the money and says a prayer, but nothing has truly reached the spirits yet. Dorothy asked if the goddess had heard the high priestess's words amidst all the shouting of the crowd. Agatha found it odd that people were more excited about the high priestess than about Dorothy. Judging by the priestess's thoughts, some of the voices were fake. If the faith continues to praise the sanctuary and the high priestess, it will be difficult to restore power to the holy spirits. Dorothy remembered her mother's words from a past life. She insisted that a shaman must know how to be compassionate. It is their role to stand between people and spirits. The main character asked the spirit if she could use her divine power on her. Agatha could lift her into the air, but she wouldn't be able to hold her for long. Without further ado, Dorothy jumped from the high floor and slowly flew down. When the girl was closer to the ground, Agatha was able to keep her stable in the air, and people could not believe what they saw. The main character asked Mariana if her child was okay. The surprised woman couldn't understand how the saint knew her name. The woman revealed that even when they went to the clinic and tried all kinds of medicine, nothing worked. Dorothy touched the child, saying that the 8 spirits of the Empire and Vesta, the spirit of health and heart, would look after her child. The saint ordered the nearest worker to direct Mariana and give her child food. They have never done this before, so they should be surprised. Until this moment, the sanctuary only verbally talked about saving people. Poor people received hope. They shared their problems with the saint and begged her for help. Dorothy said the sanctuary would help everyone, and any patients with urgent problems would be examined by the clerics. These words didn't sit well with the high priestess. Because the priests went to the lowest places, the faithful must ascend to the highest. These are the words of the spirit of Agatha. For the sanctuary's reputation, the high priestess couldn't contradict Dorothy's words. Everything had to return to its place. The high priestess agreed with the saint's words, and the people began to shout with joy at the return of the saint. The priestess approached Dorothy and remarked on her wonderful pronunciation, but later she asked to come to her office. A little later, the high priestess wanted to clarify why Dorothy had acted in her own way without consulting her. Suddenly, the face of the high priestess changed. A little earlier, it was quite wondrous, but now it returned to normal. The woman's face did not look human or show any emotion. It looked like an evil spirit. Agatha noticed this too. She didn't know the exact reason, but it was probably because her soul had become quite dark. Usually, if the soul is pure, it's white or transparent. When it's covered in corruption, it's gray. But never before had the goddess seen such a dark soul, so Dorothy must be wary. The high priestess decided to speak directly. She had never given her the authority to act independently. It seemed Dorothy had been too careless with the high priestess and wasn't prepared for the consequences. The main character managed to get out of it by saying that she saved the priestess from the danger that was approaching from the future. Each spirit had special abilities. For example, Vesta could create fires. Agatha is able to see the future, although the goddess has not yet received her ability, but the fact itself remained. The high priestess had never heard that they actually had such specific abilities. Dorothy said that Agatha had shown her a vision, something she doesn't usually do because it worries people and they will rely on it too much. And according to the girl, the goddess Agatha was worried about the future of the high priestess, so she looked at her future. In the near future, the emperor will be able to make a counterattack, which will weaken the high priestess's position and put her position at risk. Agatha said she needed to win the hearts of the empire's citizens to prepare for this. The high priestess was glad that she was praised. Of course, such an act would spend a lot of the sanctuary's savings, but it had to be done for the long-term maintenance of the sanctuary. The high priestess was pleased that the spirits understood her heart. She agreed that the investment in the future was worth it. The woman added that within a week, Dorothy should be ready to participate in a tea party chaired by the Marchioness of Allende. Marquise Alanda, Emperor Theodore's aunt, like the last emperor and empress, is a devout follower of the Melta faith. Therefore, she often argues with the unbelieving Theodore. Even so, her family is now the only one who can stand up to the emperor without consequences. Participating in the tea party means that they are using the saint to expand the influence of the sanctuary. Following the official welcome of the saint, the sanctuary launched a massive relief effort for the first time in a century. For the first couple of days, Dorothy's act was the most talked about topic. But soon, the newspapers were filled with stories about the merciful high priestess. If she continues to lose popularity in the battle for public opinion, Dorothy will need to find a way to influence newspaper coverage as well. A week later, the high priestess and Dorothy found themselves in a chariot. The woman asked the saint not to do anything unexpected and to obey her. Dorothy was lost in thought, so absorbed in her thoughts about the newspapers that she did not pay attention to the tea party. The girl wanted to know the high priestess's plan. Agatha revealed that at the tea party, everyone present was an important figure. She thought that the priestess was going to spread bad rumors about the emperor to raise the opinion of the sanctuary. The newspapers were filled with stories of the saint who had received a revelation even without the blue lights. So the priestess planned to say that the saint had received a new reading about the emperor. Suddenly, the connection with Agatha disappeared again. Until this moment, this had happened only once. The girls went inside, and the Marquise noticed that they were quite late. And suddenly, the girl's gaze widened. Dorothy couldn't understand why her bad feelings always turned out to be right. Theodore was also at the tea party. Dorothy wanted to hide behind the priestess all the time. She came here with relief because she was told Theodore wouldn't be here. The priestess lowered her head and greeted the Marquise and the Emperor, thanking them for their invitation. Dorothy was so lost in thought that she forgot to greet the Emperor, and when she was told about it, she came to her senses. This is an important event, so Dorothy needs to pull herself together. She placed her hand on her heart and greeted those present. Theodore finally realized that this was truly the saint everyone was talking about. He'd heard that Dorothy was a holy gift to the Empire. The Emperor asked the main character to raise her head, because today's organizer is not him, but the Marquis. Auntie remarked that the Emperor seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. The reason Theodore was so happy was that he had finally found what he had been searching for. The Marquis thanked everyone for coming, despite how busy they were. Even though the atmosphere was calm, Dorothy could not calm down when Theodore looked at her so intently. The High Priestess looked like someone whose plan to spread rumors had been ruined. The Allen family should be loyal to the families of the Melta faith. If that is the case, inviting their nephew who goes against the sanctuary is not the best idea. As his aunt, she should know why he came to such hatred of Melta's faith. And without Agatha, who is able to help the main character at any moment, she must survive this alone. Dorothy desperately hoped that this tea party would end quietly, without any new events. The Marquis recalled that recently, stories about the saint had surprised her. Her efforts for the sanctuary were astonishing. The woman wanted to know if the saint could really fly. Theodore laughed and said that hearing such a conversation sounded incredible. The aunt asked the Emperor how he dared to say such a thing directly to the saint's face. Theodore said that he didn't believe that he wouldn't be part of the imperial family, so he didn't trust such nonsense. The Emperor decided that he would be the first to leave. He also addressed the Marquise and the saint, saying that up until this point he had kept his mouth shut. Theodore advised him to stop trying to change his faith before his patience ran out. The Marquis said that she was speaking only for his benefit. Theodore can gain new faith thanks to today. Dorothy apologized for interrupting, but the spirits began talking to the girl right then and there. First, Dorothy wanted to ask Theodore something. Turning to the Emperor, she asked if they could have some privacy. Theodore said that this was already becoming a hindrance, but he still agreed to Dorothy's request. The boys secluded themselves, and Theodore asked his subject to make sure that no one came near them. When he left, the Emperor asked the girl, or Mary, what the saint really wanted. At the tea party, everyone tried to provoke the Emperor. She understood that the opinion of her was getting even worse, so Dorothy had to explain herself well. Even though Dorothy can't use Agatha's power on Theodore, she knows information about him from the original story that no one else knew. The main character decided to tell the truth right away. She wanted to crush Mayelta's faith, and to achieve this, Dorothy needed Theodore to join her. She understood that the Emperor would not believe her, so she asked if he could at least find out the reasons why the saint wanted to disband the sanctuary of Mayelta. The Emperor must have known about Agatha, one of the imperial protective spirits. He might not believe it, but Dorothy was able to hear her. The Empire was rotting from the sanctuary, because the holy spirits had weakened, and a terrible event would soon come. Agatha also told the main character that the Emperor wanted to destroy the sanctuary. The truth about Theodore not being a believer is common talk among the residents, but the idea that he wants to destroy the sanctuary was only in Theodore's head. Dorothy wanted to stop the disaster that would engulf this world, so in that sense, she and the Emperor have the same goal. Theodore wanted to know why she'd called herself Maria and lied to him, because she had a chance. The girl didn't want to communicate in such an open place, and besides, as an ordinary citizen, she wouldn't have had the chance to be alone with the Emperor. So Dorothy used the sanctuary to become a saint and meet the Emperor. Now Theodore was even more confused. He wanted to know why the spirits had assigned tasks to her if he wanted to deal with the corruption of the sanctuary. Even if the power of the Holy Spirits has weakened, they are still strong enough to give signs like blue lights. Only spirits are able to light blue lights. No one can influence this, but the revelations are different. They can be a lie made by priests. Dorothy added that in the past, there were times when the sanctuary openly lied about revelations. 16 years ago, on this very day, the plague incident that took countless lives, One day, a revelation came from the sanctuary. Immediately afterward, a plague began to spread throughout the empire. The reason the spirits were angry was because people did not accept them. After a long silence, the great sanctuary offered a solution. The spirits, who wanted to see the devotion of those who repented, were to bring offerings. And then the world fell into chaos. A father offering his life as an offering to save his daughter, a little boy dying for his mother, and piles of gold began to fall into the sanctuary. The emperor before Theodore wasn't much different. For Theodore's younger brother, their second son, they withdrew from state affairs and spent all their time in the sanctuary, pouring out all their treasures. A few years later, a plague from an unknown source left behind a mountain of corpses and disappeared without a trace. Theodore couldn't believe it was the work of spirits. His entire family prayed so ardently to save his younger brother. But in the end, he died alone, without holding his parents' hands in his short life. If the shrine had not declared that the spirits were angry, the old emperor and his wife would have been able to find the cause of the plague and help the people. Dorothy said that the sanctuary changed the text of the revelation and stated a lie. The plague began in the sanctuary. To increase their wealth, they sold people, locked them in one place, and treated them so badly, like cattle. That is how the plague appeared. The spirits knew this, so they gave a revelation to stop the disease. But the sanctuary changed the revelation to suit their wishes and made a false statement to collect money and gifts. After this, the spirits stopped coming to the sanctuary because it was clear that they would not be able to convince people. This was the truth Dorothy learned from the goddess. Agatha was glad that they could finally fix everything, even if it was too late. Theodore asked if Dorothy could take responsibility for her words. Apparently, the girl didn't understand what she was talking about. Dorothy replied that she wanted to cooperate with the emperor. To do this, rather than surprise the emperor, it was far better to risk her life and tell the truth to earn Theodore's trust. Theodore accepted these words, but even without Dorothy, he can achieve what he decided on his own. He does not need help or cooperation. Dorothy said that as a saint, she could watch the sanctuary's movements without raising an alarm. Theodore interrupted her and asked what she would gain from this. Helping the spirits cleanse the world, Theodore did not believe in such a weak sense of faith. If Dorothy wanted cooperation so much, she should also get something. The main character revealed that the spirits promised to grant her any wish if she succeeded. Theodore wanted to know what wish the girl had asked for, but she could not say, because even if the spirits were not visible, they could hear her. Dorothy added that in exchange, she could give him information about the high priestess's secret vault. The high priestess had a vault where she stored the stolen gifts of the inhabitants, and no one in the empire knew its location. Theodore was interested, and the girl said that she could not immediately reveal such information, only if the emperor promised to cooperate with her. The emperor called it a brave act, for the girl was seriously trying to make a deal with the emperor of the nation. The main character said that if Theodore found the vault without Dorothy's promise, she would be left without a way to protect herself, and the high priestess would certainly kill her. Theodore stood up and said he'd consider her offer. Dorothy added that she'd dig up many more of the high priestess's weaknesses than just the safe. Before the emperor left, Dorothy decided to apologize for her recent lie, which made the emperor smile. Such a lie was unforgivable, but Theodore will think about whether he should forgive Dorothy, and now he is leaving. The girl exhaled. She could perceive this dialogue as a positive sign. Theodore could not agree right away, but if she becomes even more useful, he will have no other options. Dorothy was overjoyed. At that moment, a small child stood behind the bushes, watching the girl from the garden. On his way back, Theodore thought that the fact that the plague started in the sanctuary was not surprising. The sanctuary that he knew was quite similar, but without evidence, it's just a crazy story, and the one who told it is a saint of the church. But even so, the very thought that such a thing could happen angered Theodore. The saint who appeared out of nowhere, who forced the sanctuary to help the townspeople. Only when Dorothy first saw Theodore was she frightened. Then, she longed to meet him in person. The high priestess noticed that they had been walking with the emperor for a long time and wanted to know what the conversation was about. Dorothy knew she couldn't reveal the truth, that she wanted to cooperate with him and go against the sanctuary. The high priestess looked angry, because the sudden appearance of the emperor had taken the woman's ideology out of control, and nothing was going according to her plan. Dorothy said that she asked the emperor for a personal meeting for the benefit of the high priestess. The main character added that the high priestess always wanted to know where the emperor was, so she wanted to win his heart. The priestess said not to talk nonsense. There was no one who did not know how little interest the emperor had in women. The woman soon learned from Dorothy that she had met Theodore in the chapel, and the priestess wondered why she hadn't known about it before. Dorothy lied to the high priestess that the spirits told her that the emperor had taken an interest in her. The high priestess could not believe that the emperor was interested in the saint, but the girl convinced her. The woman suggested that they spoke privately to ensure Dorothy's feelings. Dorothy revealed that because of his title as a saint, he was a little afraid, but Theodore opened his heart. Theodore listened to her and didn't interrupt even once. He focused on every word that passed. Agatha was surprised by Dorothy's skill. She really managed to get out of the water dry, noting her talent. The high priestess was overjoyed if the emperor was finally in her power. Agatha was delighted. The priestess completely believed her words. But if Dorothy cooperates with the emperor, she will have to reveal the truth. But Dorothy hasn't yet thought about what to do when the truth comes out, because if Theodore finds out about it now, he will try to kill her. The emperor immediately sent his subjects to investigate the plague of 16 years ago. Theodore ordered to start from the region where he first appeared and search the nearest villages and mountains, looking for suspicious abandoned houses, everything from the very beginning. The subject said that it would be difficult to find any new leads, since 16 years had already passed. If the saint was right and the plague started in a smuggler's den, the investigation should have found something, but they found nothing at that location, which meant that even the location of the plague's origin might have been a fake. Theodore asked to investigate the high priestess again. She must have a secret safe. The subjects had already investigated it a couple of years ago and found nothing. Theodore had already conducted this search. But this is the work of the one who asked for cooperation. Dorothy's gaze never wavered during the story. There was no guarantee that the girl was right, or that what she believed was true. Dorothy could simply insist that the lie was true. To Theodore's surprise, he couldn't shake the feeling that the main character was telling the truth. A couple of days later, Agatha learned to lift Dorothy much higher. Much of her strength returned, and she can lift the girl higher and hold her in the air for 5 minutes. The goddess's forces were returning rapidly, but they had one more unresolved problem: newspapers. In this story, the level of development was such that during the transition period, they had rails and steam locomotives. It took weeks for newspapers to reach the entire empire. Newspapers were highly valuable, and the high priest controlled most of them from the shadows. When Dorothy debuted as a saint, almost every headline made the high priestess a star. If she wanted to spread her name as a saint, she had to win over the newspapers. Agatha looked into the weaknesses of the main newspaper owners, but she did not find any significant dirt on them. So the only way is money. But since Dorothy couldn't do any more private readings, she had little money left, so she offered one last job. Agatha refused, saying that if Dorothy did it now, rumors would spread and her reputation would fall. Winning the press is necessary not only for the saint, but also to prove one's usefulness to Theodore. While the main character was thinking about ideas on how to get a license in the newspapers, she suddenly noticed a small child. The spirit of Horde appeared before Dorothy and begged the girl to save this child. While she wondered where the child came from, Agatha didn't expect Hort to come and ask Dorothy directly, but he said he would explain the details later. The main character didn't know the details, but if the spirits went that far, it had to be important. Dorothy approached the child and asked his name. The boy's name was Henry, and his condition was terrible. There were humanitarian aid programs in the Empire, but there were also places they hadn't reached yet. Henry had heard that free supplies were being handed out at the sanctuary, and he was also a resident of the Empire. Seeing a truly hungry child, Dorothy decided to help him by making a whole feast for the child. Normally, anyone can't get into the sanctuary's dining room, but it's holy, so Dorothy has those rights. Henry asked to take some food with him because he has a lot of friends who are waiting. They all live together, and if Henry brings food to them, everyone will be happy. Dorothy assumed they don't have parents. Dorothy happily offered to bring Henry tons of food for his friends. It would be hard, so she would help. A joyful Henry approached the house and shouted the names of his friends: Lizzie, Gail, Chris. Henry revealed that he had received supplies and food from the sanctuary. Lizzie said the supplies should have arrived in a couple of days, but he left because everyone was starving. When Lizzie noticed the adult, she pulled Henry home by the hand, asking the boy if he had gone crazy. Dorothy told Dorothy that the children had run away from the orphanage because they were being abused. Until this point, Dorothy could only watch, but now some of his strength had returned, and he was able to direct Henry to the saint. Dorothy's observation of these children made Dorothy even more determined to help them. The main character introduced herself. The children recognized her, and she wanted to come in, but Lizzie shouted at her to move away. The girl's name was Lizzie, and as long as she held the other children, Dorothy would not be able to feed them. Dorothy called upon the divine spirit Vesta. The girl needed her power so that the children could leave the building. If Vesta, the protector of the heart, heats up the food with her own power, the smell will lure the children outside. The man who helped carry the supplies was shocked. Right before his eyes, the saint performed a miracle. Vesta was glad that she had succeeded. Fire is still difficult to control through the human body, but Dorothy is an excellent conductor. Soon the children couldn't take it anymore and started eating while Lizzie tried to stop them. The children began to eat. Dorothy asked them not to rush because they could choke. Lizzie pointed out that there was no point in being so nice if they were going to get hurt again. Dorothy approached the girl with a piece of bread in her hands, introducing herself again. But Lizzie didn't believe her. Lizzie asked what she wanted to do, assuming that Dorothy was going to sell the children. Dorothy just wanted the children to eat well, but Lizzie continued to disbelieve her, saying she had some tricks up her sleeve. The main character said that depending on how protected this child is, she must have gone through terrible times. Agatha added that this child is not an ordinary city dweller. She is a lost child from a wealthy family. And not just any ordinary family, one of the 4 ducal houses of the empire, the Berardi family. The Berardi family is known as royalty. But why was a child from such a prestigious family in an orphanage? Even if there was no benefit to helping Lizzie, Dorothy still wanted to help her. Lizzie said all grown-ups were liars, but Dorothy decided to prove she was a saint. Using Agatha's power, the main character lifted Lizzie into the air, and the girl's anger was replaced by surprise. Dorothy could now talk to Lizzie more easily because she believed her. The girl again introduced herself as a saint from the church. Dorothy knew there were a lot of bad adults around, so she offered to trust her one last time. The girl asked why the saint had come to them at all. Dorothy replied that she was there because of the Holy Spirit of Dorothy. It took a little time, but eventually, Dorothy was able to win Lizzie's trust. Soon the saint returned to the church, but behind her were 4 children whom she had brought with her. The main character said that these children were now under the sanctuary's supervision. The worker said that they shouldn't have brought so many people. The high priestess wouldn't like it. Dorothy replied that a sanctuary should be a place that opens its doors to the poor, the lost, the sick, and the orphans. In any case, there are still many empty rooms in the sanctuary that children can occupy. All the dresses were pure white and in the sacred format. These are the things that the high priestess prepared for Dorothy. The high priestess really wanted to hammer the image of the saint into people's heads, but the dresses were still to the main character's liking. Now Dorothy was going to go and return Lizzie to her parents, and then get what she wanted. Duchess Berardi sat over her papers, her eyes in judgment growing duller with each passing day. Even moving was becoming more difficult with each passing day. The woman was already thinking about leaving this position soon. Suddenly, a subject came to tell the Duchess important information. The saint came to the estate. The Duchess couldn't believe that this was the same saint who had appeared in the newspapers. As soon as the woman noticed the saint, all her doubts about her identity were cast aside. Dorothy was literally glowing, enveloping herself in a wonderful aura. She apologized for arriving unannounced. The Duchess asked why the saint had come all this way. Dorothy replied that she had been called there by the spirits. The woman was grateful that the saint came to such an ordinary place, asking her to go through it. Before entering, Dorothy used the blessing of Euphrosyne, one of the 8 spirits, the spirit of beauty, on herself. Her power had not yet been fully restored, but even so, it improved the saint's appearance significantly. The high priestess still didn't know that Dorothy had escaped. She had to come here without a chariot, but she was able to prove her title of saint because of Euphrosyne. The Duchess asked if Dorothy was comfortable. Sviatpa replied that everything was fine, thanking the woman for the greeting, despite such an abrupt visit. The Duchess remarked that Dorothy had come at the call of the spirits, and what did the spirits tell her? The spirits said that the Duchess was shrouded in great anxiety, and the saint could help with it. The Duchess was pleased. Dorothy had expected such a reaction, to sympathize with someone under stress and reassure them to convince. Dorothy asked if the Duchess was worried about her heir. It was true, the situation put the Duchess in a difficult position. Lord Caden entered the room and said what he had already said. Caden was renounced his right of succession to the throne. The main character recognized the man, Lord Caden, the second son of the ducal house of the Berardi family, and Lizzie's father. Caden is the youngest son. Typically, noble titles in the empire go to the eldest son, but Berardi's heir was an incorrigible scoundrel. The Duchess disowned him, and the clever second son became the successor. 8 years ago, when Caden was already confirmed as the next heir, his brothers planned to steal Lord Caden's newborn child. But while the two brothers were arguing over who would get Lizzie's daughter and the title, the child disappeared in a split second. When Lord Caden and his wife began searching, it was already too late. They were never able to find her. Because of the family's honor, the Duchess could not voice this incident to the public, but soon they revealed that the child of the successor had died. Caden's wife was broken and soon became tied to the bed. There were rumors that the Lord had become insane because he had closed himself off from the world. Life was supposed to be terrible for Lizzie and Caden. Even though it was too late, Dorothy had to bring them together. Dorothy knew the spirit's words were true, but in a world without DNA testing, simply showing Lizzie wouldn't be enough. The saint would have to go through this alone. The Duchess suffered because of the successor, because Caden wanted his youngest son to become the successor. But circumstances will not allow this. The saint turned to the Lord and said that she could see fragments of the future, asking him if he knew what reading was. Dorothy took out the items from her inventory and joined in a beautiful dance, spinning around the room. The Lord thought that by the word reading, he thought that a simple priest was saying prayers, but since the saint hears spirits directly, she could have another way of receiving revelations. Dorothy stopped and suddenly told Lord Caden that the spirits were pointing to the second son of the House of Berardi. The saint asked the man to pull out one of the flags. Pulling, Caden pulled out a blue flag. The girl continued, "From what she sees, the Duchess's house has lost something important for their family." Lord Caden clutched his flag and said that it was not difficult to guess. Everyone already knew about the death of his daughter. The man already thought that the saint had come to the house to shake up the trauma again, but Dorothy interrupted him and said that her daughter was alive. Lord Caden could not believe these words. He burst into tears, asking in surprise if his daughter was really alive. The man fell to his knees and took the saint's hand. He wanted to know where he could go to see his child. The saint sent the Lord to a small river, in the middle of which there was a small bridge of stones. Horty, the spirit of children, adores moonlight. In fairy tales, Horty descends upon children to dance during the full moon. Horty told the main character that the Lord should come to the river when the full moon rises. There he will find his child. 3 hours had already passed. Caden did not believe that at such a time of night there would be a child here. Suddenly, Henry appeared in a magician's costume. He turned to the Lord and asked if a girl had passed by. Lord Caden said that there were no girls here, and realized that he would not be able to find his daughter. But another child appeared behind Henry. This time it was Lizzie, who was looking for Henry. Looking at Lizzie, Lord Caden fell silent. Her eyes were perfect like his wife's. Lizzie looked up and noticed an adult, scared of him. She took Henry and said that they were leaving. Caden tried to stop the kid. He said that he is not a bad person and can prove who he is. The more Caden looked at his daughter, the more she reminded him of his wife. The Lord asked if Lizzie could listen to him. He revealed that he had a beautiful daughter when she was a child. Bad people made her disappear. Caden had been looking for her for 8 years. Lizzie thought about it and said she was 8 too, and she didn't have a father or a mother. Caden used to think that the saying that parents always recognize their children was nonsense, but now he understood its meaning. Lord Caden began to cry. He told the girl that she was his daughter Juliet and asked her to hug him. The daughter and father were finally reunited, and Caden was incredibly happy that the spirits really brought him to his family. In the west of the capital, the night market opened on the full moon. After the children were brought there, Dorothy used Horty's powers to direct the children to Caden. Horty was able to help the children only because of Dorothy. The spirit wanted to help others and look for their parents, but he didn't have that much strength yet. Dorothy was surprised because the spirits, who did not need food or healing, were supposed to help people. The spirits in Dorothy's past life left her with nothing but illnesses and mocked her. One day, when it's all over, if Dorothy asks the spirits to cut off their connection with her, what will they feel? Lord Caden brought a whole chest, which was completely filled with gold bars as a reward for the saint. The girl did not expect such a reward. The Lord predicted that she would say so, but he had no other way to express his gratitude. If Dorothy didn't want to accept the gold, Caden gave her a small chest containing a bracelet. It was a family heirloom made from precious minerals. Agatha told Dorothy that this bracelet had spiritual energy in it, as the spirit had already said, nature holds power for them. The bracelet was safe for a person. It just added a little strength and energy to him. Lizzie ran into the room. She changed her clothes to more decent ones and was glad to see the saint. Dorothy said that she is almost always in the sanctuary, so whenever she wants to see her friends or her, the girl is free to come. Caden understood that Lizzie was happy to see the saint, but asked the girl to see her mother for a short while. The Lord wanted to ask the saint one more thing. He was overjoyed at his daughter's return, but his brothers were now a problem. They may threaten Lizzie again, and since they have already announced their death, there will be questions about paternity. Dorothy asked the Lord why he was worried if he had a saint who could contact the spirits again. A couple of days later, Dorothy was reading the newspaper. Everything was going smoothly. They officially announced the return of their biological daughter. The moment Dorothy asked the spirits, she told Caden that it would be better to buy the newspaper back. It is best to reveal the actions of his brothers to the whole world. Caden should not fear for the honor of the family. He will be a hero who confidently rejected rottenness and revealed the truth. The newspaper company's headline was Morning of the Empire. With the Duchess's family's money, they easily bought the newspaper. After exposing his brother's crimes, he revealed that his daughter was alive. And thanks to Caden, they helped Dorothy fill the newspaper with news about the saint and the spirits. Dorothy didn't buy the newspaper herself, but Caden promised to continue collaborating with her, and she finally had a strong ally. Caden created a special section for Dorothy, The Life of a Saint. In this section, people could submit stories about the saint and reports from people who had witnessed the saint's good deeds. Dorothy agreed, as this method could raise people's faith. But the high priestess was becoming more evil every day. At that moment, the emperor picked up the newspaper. The subject revealed to Theodore that they had been publishing aggressive headlines to protect the missing daughter. Theodore wondered. Berardi's lost daughter had returned after 8 years, and the newspaper the family had bought had begun publishing headlines about the saint. This couldn't be a coincidence. He smirked. Dorothy was much more abrupt than he'd expected. His aunt's holiday banquet was approaching, and she was extremely fascinated by the saint, so she would be invited. On the day of the Marquise of Alanda's banquet, people gossiped that the saint would be at the banquet. Aland accompanied the saint. Their outfits were stunning, and the sight of Dorothy captivated people. Her appearance was so good thanks to the powers of the Holy Spirit of Euphrosyne, and the fact that her blessing was still working meant that Theodore had not yet arrived. If the emperor were nearby, her connection with the spirits and blessing would have already disappeared. Based on Agatha's words, thanks to tea drinking and newspapers, the nobility began sending out invitations to the sanctuary, but the high priestess did not want to share these invitations with Dorothy. Instead, she used these opportunities and improved her relations with the nobility. If Dorothy shows her face in a large crowd, many invitations will be right in front of her, and the high priestess will not be able to stop her. The marquise thanked everyone for their presence. It was a small banquet, but she hoped everyone would have a good time. And since the banquet had an important guest, Saint Dorothy was now introduced by the Marchioness. People immediately surrounded the saint and began showering her with compliments. Dorothy responded in kind. It was Saint Dorothy's first banquet. She thought it would be scary, but everyone was very welcoming. Dorothy expressed how much she enjoyed talking to everyone. She had only stayed in the sanctuary up to this point, so she hadn't even thought about how much fun it could be. When the nobility learned that Dorothy had not had a tour of the capital, one guy suggested that the saint go to the lake on Gordon's private lands, and she immediately agreed. Suddenly, a red-haired girl appeared behind her and broke the atmosphere with her laughter, saying that she did not expect how open the saint was to all invitations. The girl heard that St. Dorothy ignored a lot of invitations. Has she changed her mind yet? Dorothy finally found the man who was ignored because of the high priestess. Suddenly, people started turning around. Dorothy said she never received any invitations. The saint reiterated that she never received any invitations, even if they were addressed directly to her. Victoria Hansen said that her subject personally delivered the letter. She asked him to give the letter to the saint at the sanctuary, and Victoria was convinced that the letter had been delivered to the high priestess. So she asked her if it was true. The priestess apologized. She said that some assistant was looking into her lockers, and the priestess gave him a chance to improve. But apparently, people don't change that easily. Bowing before the girl, the woman asked for the purest apology for her mistake. Victoria was pleased with such an honest apology, so she said that they simply misunderstood each other. Dorothy decided to take matters into her own hands, so she asked Lady Victoria to send her the invitation again, because this time it would definitely reach her. Now that Dorothy has made such a promise in front of everyone, the high priestess will no longer be able to hide her invitations. Now Dorothy is a simple townswoman with her success, who knows nothing about nobility or words like invitations, someone perfect for the high priestess to manipulate without suspicion. The saint was tired, having always had to go against the priestess. Now, all she could do was wait for Theodore. Dorothy looked up and was surprised to see Theodore right in front of her, sitting in a tree. The girl asked the emperor what he was doing in the tree. Theodore replied that, from a distance, it seemed she was heading that way. But inside the building, everyone was focused on him, so he decided to do it differently. The emperor added that nothing good happened if he came to the banquet early. But this was not an important topic. Dorothy was just about to continue the conversation when she saw Theodore, who jumped straight towards her. Theodore landed on the fence and asked the frightened Saint Dorothy what had happened. Dorothy replied that she was just nervous and thought the emperor might fall. Theodore was surprised to notice that Dorothy was worried about strange things. This surprised Dorothy, for the strange thing here was the emperor, since normal people don't jump out of trees like that. In general, the saint decided to get straight to the point. She asked why Theodore wanted to see her one-on-one. Theodore said that he had already decided about Dorothy's proposal and had come to give her a definite answer. He couldn't find out if Dorothy was telling the truth, especially about the part about the plague 16 years ago. So he tried to find any clues. Dorothy was sure he wouldn't have found a clue about the plague 16 years ago. Dorothy apologized to the emperor for possibly exhausting him by searching for the information she had uncovered. Theodore didn't understand the reason for the apology. Dorothy added that he had gone through all this because of her. It had been a long time, and he had gotten into trouble for nothing. Theodore asked if there was any way to confirm whether what happened back then was true. At this point, Dorothy didn't know the answer to that question, so the emperor had one less reason to join her. The emperor believed that Dorothy was losing hope, so he said that if she wanted to take her offer back, she was free to do so. The saint didn't want to give up. She asked if there were other reasons Theodore might cooperate with her. The final reason turned out to be the high priestess's safe. Dorothy told Theodore that she would only tell him the safe's location if they cooperated. The girl wanted to know if he even intended to cooperate with her. Isaac told the emperor that the saint could be quite useful, for he had learned that she had gained the trust of Berardi's second son behind the high priestess's back. But even then he couldn't decide. From Dorothy's nonsense about the plague to her claim that she wasn't the high priestess's pawn, Theodore thought none of it was worth believing. Dorothy said that she would make the emperor believe, but suddenly he interrupted her and said that they would cooperate, but he would not trust her. Theodore was convinced he had nothing to lose by cooperating with Dorothy, but if her actions made him regret his decision, he would try to fill Dorothy's life with suffering. The subject told the emperor that he must return to the banquet as his aunt was looking for him. The emperor understood that Dorothy was under the watchful eye of the high priestess, so they had to discuss the next meeting place. Dorothy revealed that she was trying to get together with Theodore, so if he came straight to the sanctuary, the priestess would just think that the saint had succeeded. So the emperor can come in person or send a carriage for her, so it won't be difficult to meet. Immediately after this, Dorothy went back to the banquet building. This is the best excuse to escape the eyes of the high priestess. The Marchioness noticed Dorothy's tired appearance and asked why she looked more tired than before. A couple of days later, the saint received mail from her piece in the newspaper, and they sent her many gifts. The method of manipulating the priestess worked. Now cards and gifts from the nobility come directly to Dorothy. Surprisingly, the gifts included flowers sent by Theodore. Dorothy thought it was a threat, or that the white flowers signified a funeral. There was also a card in the flowers. The text read, "White roses meant a new beginning, and lilies meant a wish for happiness." Theodore hoped that this would be a good gift for her, and they would see each other at noon. The assistant had no idea that the emperor could be so romantic, noting that the saint was truly special. Becky, Dorothy's exclusive assistant, helped the saint dress in her best for the banquet with Theodore. Dorothy arrived at Theodore's place, wanting to know what this place was. This estate was intended so that Theodore could remain incognito. Dorothy thought the emperor might invite her to his castle, but Theodore countered, saying it was too soon, because if he invited her to the castle, it would seem too intimate. Remembering her words at her last meeting with Theodore, Dorothy began to think that he really did want to kill her. Theodore wasn't angry now because this was the best way to deceive the high priestess. She is the type of person who believes in desires and greed. But when Dorothy just said this to the emperor's face and ran off to the banquet hall, he was really angry. Dorothy was surprised that even though Theodore was an emperor, he made his own tea and served it perfectly. The saint hoped that Theodore was in a better mood than usual today, so she could ask him about it. Dorothy approached the emperor and asked him to do something, or rather, to measure the distance. In truth, Dorothy couldn't use her spiritual powers in front of the emperor. Since Theodore was under strong protection, the spirits couldn't overpower her. Theodore didn't believe in the power of spirits, but Dorothy reminded him of rumors that she had flown in the sky. Dorothy said it was okay if he didn't believe her, but she needed it to convince people. Agatha said there is a certain distance where her abilities stop working, and she needs to measure it today. Theodore was a little disappointed, but suddenly Dorothy took out a piece of paper and gave it to the emperor. It had the location of the high priestess's secret vault written on it. The girl wrote down on a piece of paper all the information she knew about this storage facility. Dorothy waved her hand back, saying that she would only give Theodore the paper if he helped with her experiment. Before the experiment began, Dorothy asked Theodore to stand up and go to the corner of the room. Dorothy began to move further and further away, waiting for Agatha to address her. The girl continued walking. The room was already ending, but Agatha still hadn't appeared, so she opened the window. The main character was sure that she would end up successful, so she reached out of the window. Stretching to an unsafe distance, she finally heard Agatha, who asked her to be careful. Dorothy wanted to know if she had received information about the range of the abilities. The distance turned out to be 21 meters, after which Agatha began to disappear again. The reason for the connection being broken was Theodore, who rushed to the saint and gently pulled her back into the room. Dorothy thought Theodore had misunderstood her intentions, although it could indeed look quite dangerous. The main character said that she had no intention of jumping. She was measuring the distance and holding on tightly to the window frame so as not to fall. Theodore declared that she was reckless, adding that people who believe in spirits are all the same. The emperor asked if the girl had completed her experiment. Dorothy revealed that the range for activating her abilities was 21 meters. Having heard the answer, the emperor turned around and walked towards the chairs, saying that it was necessary to finish their dialogue. If Dorothy thought of herself not as a saint he had to destroy, but as one of his valuable citizens, Theodore became less scary. That same day, she shared the location of the high priestess's secret vault, and they discussed their next steps. Dorothy's task would be to monitor the priestess's movements. And to convince the high priestess of his lie, Theodore suggested pretending that they were in a relationship, starting from a poor citizen, becoming a saint, and successfully meeting the emperor. Dorothy can finally continue to work hard to stop the impending disaster. Soon, Dorothy looked at the sheets and one of them stood out. This letter was from Lord Caden, to whom she decided to come. He was still overjoyed at how he found his daughter. After that, he built a new chapel that helps people. Thanks to Caden's money and character, Dorothy received a lot of help as well. Dorothy asked Lord Caden not to tell anyone that she had arrived, as the high priestess is very strict and she was forbidden from going anywhere. Caden was surprised. He couldn't understand how she could treat the saint like that. Dorothy said it wasn't just her watching. The priestess was staring at her too intently. Caden didn't know the priestess was such a person, but the saint still tries to find the good in her. The Lord swore to himself that he would protect St. Dorothy with all his might, because this man was so kind. Eliza wrote a letter to Dorothy that the Lord was completely on her side and helped her with everything every day, so she hoped that they would be able to see each other. The church worker went to the saint and told her that news had come from the high priestess. The date for the ceremony of the saint's return had been set. The ceremony was scheduled to take place in 15 days, with the event starting at the sanctuary and moving slowly towards the Beza Mountains. Dorothy immediately remembered the bracelet from Lord Caden. He said that the stones from it were mined in the Beza Mountains. In the Beza Mountains, there is a very old sanctuary where the remains of the first saint were buried. Agatha remarked that it was strange. The remains of the first saint should not be there. This child wanted to die quietly, so he was secretly buried in his hometown. Agatha told Dorothy that she would fly to observe the high priestess's actions. At this time, there was good news in the imperial palace. Theodore had found the secret vault of the high priestess. Isaac noticed that the emperor's reaction was calmer. The guy assumed that His Highness was interested in the holy. Isaac decided to help Theodore and said it was best to start things off gently. If he acted like he usually did, he might scare her. What was more important now was that they had the location of the high priestess's safe, and she didn't know about it. Isaac had also heard that a woman around the priestess's age visited the place quite often. Theodore was delighted. The weakness of the high priestess, which he would never have been able to find himself, really existed. So, collaborating with the saint was completely justified, although Theodore was a little uncomfortable. Theodore didn't understand why all people who believe in spirits are so similar. Suddenly, the emperor remembered how the empress wanted to give her life, only if it would save her son. Theodore didn't understand why people who believed in spirits were so selfless.